So this is really interesting to me, guys. We've seen U.S. media have a massive pro-Israel bias, and it's actually quantifiable. It's actually, you can prove it with data. So we've seen that report from The Intercept that looked at the language used to talk about Israelis versus Palestinians. And when, Israeli civilians die, it's terrorism, it's a slaughter, it's a massacre. There's all this emotive language. When Palestinian civilians die, they don't, it's very passive language. It's very passive language, like a natural disaster happened or something. It's not a slaughter, an atrocity, a massacre, etc. And this is something we've seen across U.S. media. But I will say, as this has been going on and on, this genocide has been going on and on, you do start to see now people who are usually stalwart defenders of establishment thinking, even they're starting to break with Biden and with the Israeli government. So here we have Fareed Zakaria, and he's going to do a really good piece here on the U.S. policy and posture towards Israel. And the reason why this matters, guys, is that there was a report about a month ago, and we covered it, that Biden obsessively watches certain shows. And Trump did the same thing, whatever it was, Fox and Friends, Hannity, Tucker, whatever it was when he was in there. With Biden, we learned Morning Joe is one that he watches all the time, and he takes them seriously. And in fact, he calls Joe Scarborough to ask for advice, which is terrible. It's the worst political instincts. He's a freaking Republican, right? You want his instincts on how to win as a Democrat and do good things as a Democrat? Piss off, okay? But the other one was Fareed Zakaria. So here we go. Fareed Zakaria really went in on Biden's failure over Israel. Watch this.
When Hamas launched its gruesome terror attack on Israel on October 7th of last year, President Biden made a decision based on conviction and calculation. He announced his complete solidarity with the country. Biden must have calculated that the only way to have any influence on Israel would be to hug it close, show real empathy, send it the arms it needed, and thus earn Israel's trust to shape its response. It was a thought-through strategy, but it has failed almost completely.
It's failed almost completely. Now, by the way, I break with him when he says, oh, this was a thought-out strategy. Biden cucking himself to Israel was very well thought out. No, it is reflexive. It's an impulse from being in Washington since like 1827. That's what they do. That's what they do. The impact of the Israel lobby is tremendous. There's unanimity among the politicians with maybe a 2% disagreement that, oh, yes, Israel, our top ally, we give them whatever the hell they want. And so there was no thought into that at all. He's just like, I'm going to do what you as presidents do. I'm going to bend the knee.
From the start, the administration urged the Israelis to consider proportionality in their response to Hamas. Israel heard it and went ahead with one of the most extensive bombing campaigns in this century against a population of about 2.2 million people that by Israel's own estimates contained about 30,000 Hamas militants. By one January estimate, more than half of buildings across Gaza have been damaged or destroyed. The administration counseled Israel against a large ground invasion of Gaza, advising it to take a narrower, targeted approach aimed at eliminating Hamas militants and infrastructure. The Israeli government held lots of long meetings with U.S. officials and then again went ahead with the ground invasion. The Biden team urged a humanitarian pause, but only got a brief one when it was able to get the government of Qatar to broker a hostage exchange. After initial operations wound up, American officials told Israeli officials that what was done in the north of Gaza could not be done to the south. Yet, after telling people to move to the south to get out of harm's way, Israel then proceeded to bomb the south in a manner that President Biden himself admitted is indiscriminate. The U.S. has repeatedly pressured Israel to make greater efforts to protect innocent civilians, but to little avail. Now it has been counseling against an invasion of Rafah, the city nestled close to Egypt, where over 1 million Palestinians have huddled together. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has promised to invade Rafah, whether another hostage deal is made or not. Washington has warned that after the war, there should be no Israeli seizure of land in Gaza and no new Israeli occupation of the territory. The Israeli government's plans are to do both. The result is that American policy on the Gaza war now appears hapless, ineffective, and immoral.
Hapless, ineffective, and immoral. Get them.
The image of U.S. officials wringing their hands about civilian casualties while providing ever more weapons is grotesque.
This is a guy that Biden listens to. This is a guy that Biden respects. This is a show that he never misses. Get him. Come on.
Image of a president of the United States mumbling words like indiscriminate and over the top to describe Israel's bombings suggests weakness and passivity. Part of the problem is that in trusting the Israeli government, Biden is trusting Bibi Netanyahu, an exceptionally clever politician who knows how to handle American presidents expertly and has done so for decades. This time, Bibi has outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and outplayed Biden.
Oh.
But the problem goes beyond Bibi. Israel is in trauma. The October 7th attack shook the country to the core. The sense of safety that Israel was supposed to confer on its people has been shattered. As a result, many Israelis are sanctioning policies that they will regret deeply. President Biden, as a true friend of Israel, has the credibility to tell them the truth publicly and directly, perhaps in an address to the Israeli Knesset, as foreign policy expert Richard Haass has suggested. About 30,000 people have now died in Gaza, a large portion of them children. About 1 in 4 people are on the brink of famine, and almost all are dependent on food aid. As of late December, the water supply is 7% of what it was before the war.
Ooh.
Most of its hospitals no longer function. A visiting Oxford-based surgeon, Dr. Nick Maynard, described the condition at a hospital in Gaza, one of the few that are partially functioning. Quote, "We saw mainly a lot of children coming in with the most appalling injuries, many of whom you knew were going to die, and you couldn't give them pain relief. There was often no morphine. There was nowhere for them to die in dignity. So often they were just literally left lying on the floor of the corner of the emergency department to die." Israel says its goal is to totally destroy Hamas. You can kill Hamas militants, you can uproot its infrastructure, but you cannot destroy Hamas totally because it is really an idea. The idea that armed resistance is the only way Palestinians will get their rights. To defeat this idea, you need a better one, a way to show that nonviolent action and cooperation would lead to better lives for Palestinians and lasting security for both peoples. President Biden should go to Israel and show the country his love for it by speaking these hard truths. He would also show America and the world that he still has the energy, moral clarity, and wisdom to lead.
Now, here's the problem with that. Biden goes to speak to the Knesset in Israel and says some of the things that Fareed wants him to say. His ass is going to get booed. His ass is going to get booed off stage. That's what's going to happen. And all of a sudden, this tour for him to look strong, it's actually going to make him look even weaker. So, but look, the fact that he's breaking with Biden as much as he is, and he's using words like hapless and ineffective and describing the atrocities and the hellish conditions as they are, what that tells me is, even to the establishment, it's undeniable now. What's happening in Gaza is undeniable now. You know, it took a while with the Iraq War, for example, for the media to catch up to the public's perception. The public soured on the war within, maybe 3 years or so. And then it became hated and despised. But the media held on for a long time. The change in perception among the media over a short time span means, you know, they're seeing all the pictures coming out of Gaza. They're seeing all the videos. They're reading all the stories. They're learning all the details. And at a certain point, it's undeniable. And even defenders of the establishment have nothing left to say, but this has got to stop, man. He even makes the point that we've been making from day one, which is the idea that you can totally destroy Hamas is laughable. You're making Hamas bigger and stronger with your actions. How many parents did you kill? How many parents? How many family members? Won't that make it so the lives of some of the people who remain are now committed to destroying Israel? Didn't you increase recruitment by killing so many innocent people? And by creating so many orphans? Didn't you strengthen their resolve and their numbers? Aren't there going to be more Palestinian hardliners now as a direct result of your actions? And this is something even Fareed Zakaria understands. So look, my one disagreement with him is, as per usual, when it's the U.S. and our allies, these things are talked about as like, oh, you know, the strategy isn't right. It's all like tactical nitpicking is what we'll call it. That's not the right way to talk about this. The right way to talk about this is in clear moral terms. Because if the same set of facts were there, but it was Iran committing the atrocities, would people be saying, Iran is making tactical mistakes? No, it's inconceivable. You'd say they're terrorists, they're a brutal theocracy and dictatorship. They need regime change. They're flagrantly violating international law, and the international community has to take some sort of action in response to it. This is genocide. This is unacceptable, right? But since it's our ally, it's more, you talk mostly in the realm of strategy. So what's the real answer? Guys, it's screaming at us. Cut off the money to Israel. This is what Biden needs to do. Cut off the money. Cut off the weapons. Condemn Israel through the UN. Don't back them come hell or high water and defend them no matter what they do. Drop sanctions on government officials. Bring them up on war crimes charges. And then the sixth and final thing, and the most important thing, is force peace on them and broker a deal for Palestinian liberation and sovereignty. This has always been the answer. Cut off the money, cut off the weapons, condemn them at the UN, sanction the government officials, bring them up on war crimes charges, the ones who have committed war crimes, force peace on them, and broker a deal for Palestinian liberation and sovereignty. But look, the fact of the matter remains, this is Fareed Zakaria, who Biden listens to and likes. This is the most scathing critique that I could ever imagine coming from a CNN host. But then the question becomes this, and this is an interesting one to ponder. Is Biden going to watch this segment and then get defensive? No, he doesn't understand, man. We've been having a lot of tough conversations, Jack. Is that what he's going to do? Because my guess is that is how he's going to react. It's going to be overly defensive, and this is why, Morning Joe's been coddling Biden's ballsack for months now, and that's why he loves them the most, right? They go kid gloves on him and they defend him. And, Biden will probably, just like Trump would, search for a show that sucks him off more as opposed to one that's telling him the hard truths. And so my guess is this won't have the effect. And I guess final point is this. What I would say to Fareed, you got to this was a pretty direct segment, but you got to be even more direct. You have to say the things I laid out there. Hey, Biden, cut off the money, cut off the weapons, condemn Israel at the UN, drop sanctions on the government officials, bring them up on war crimes charges, and then force a peace deal. If you don't lay that out, and I don't think Biden's going to do that anyway, but at least this should be screamed directly into his face repeatedly until it budges him on some of his egregious passive actions. The hapless and immoral actions of just, I'm going to co-sign your genocide. So Biden lost Fareed Zakaria. Biden lost a main CNN host who he respects. And that's a big deal. Let's hope between this and the 100,000 uncommitted votes in Michigan, let's hope it wakes them up and shakes them out of their complacency. We've already seen Kamala Harris come out now and say, we need a immediate ceasefire, pause, for at least 6 weeks. So that's PR ass covering. They saw the uncommitted vote. That's PR ass covering. Yeah, ceasefire for 6 weeks. Okay, please spare me. Actually change action. There's a lot of stuff now being dropped on their head to wake them up. Let's hope they actually listen. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.